Good evening. My name is Susan Woodwick, and I want to welcome you to my home. I am one of the reference librarians at the Edina Library. This is the fourth program that the Edina Library and the Edina Community Foundation have organized since Governor Walz's stay-at-home order at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in March. It is part of a new series called From the Artist's House to Yours. This evening, Dick Crockett, who is the Executive Director of the Edina Community Foundation, will introduce you to the Legeros family, a family of artists. Dick is the co-chair of the Edina Reads Committee, along with my colleague, Maureen Millay-Smith. Dick is an avid reader and collector of books and artwork. He and the Edina Community Foundation have been active in bringing public art to the city of Edina. I'm very happy to introduce you to Dick Crockett of the Edina Community Foundation.
Good evening, and on behalf of the Edina Community Foundation, welcome to this Edina Dialogue program, From the Artist's Home to Yours. Today we'll be joined by three members of the Legeros family in Edina, each of whom began their artistic career at Gustavus Adolphus College. Maren Legeros, a 2015 fine arts graduate of the school, practices the ancient art of paper cutting. For her, the paper figures pose a special challenge of achieving a delicate balance between portraits and illustration. Maren also works as a makeup artist, helping actors fill special roles with dramatic looks for theater and film. Her mother, Anne Legeros, creates watercolors, pastels, and encaustic landscapes. For Anne, she finds inspiration in nature and works to show in her work, as is shown here, the special beauty and grace of nature. Anne has a more recent series featuring the interplay of rocks and water that allow her to achieve this vision of nature very beautifully. The husband and father in this Legeros family is Nick, who has created more than 500 bronze casting sculptures that are found throughout the Twin Cities and the surrounding region. The Edina Community Foundation has acquired several of these works for permanent display in our community. And I'll show you now, after a little unveiling, the models we have of several of these life-size works. Reflecting on friendship is Nick's bronze casting of two young children having fun playing with balloons, perhaps water bubbles. But this sculpture is found near the water in Centennial Lakes Park, just south of the Hughes Centrum. And the foundation acquired this in 2010. This figure is one of two figures in a sculpture collectively called Dreaming of Flight. That's part of the foundation's tribute to Northwest Airlines and the men and women who work there, including Don Nyrup, its longtime CEO and resident of Edina. This figure shows a little boy holding a model of the first airplane flown by Northwest, and an accompanying figure of a girl shows her holding a wide-body jet. This sculpture is joined by another one at Centennial Lakes Park called The Glamorous Days of Flight. And this shows a family of four, dressed to the nines, as we might say, typical of how people would dress up for an adventurous flight on an airline in the 1950s. Another sculpture acquired by the Foundation for Edina is the life-size standing figure of esteemed hockey coach Willard Eichela that can be found at Braemar Arena. We'll all have the opportunity to learn more about Nick's sculpting and bronze casting later this fall when the Foundation publishes a book about his career and his work. In the meantime, we have a chance to learn a little bit about Maren, Anne, and Nick today as they speak to us from their home in Edina. Actually, it's Nick's studio, but we're ready to hear their fascinating stories.
Hello and welcome. My name is Anne Legeros, and today we are at Blue Ribbon Bronze, which is a standalone building in Northeast Minneapolis. It is a foundry and studio and gallery owned by my husband, Nick. For quite some time, Hennepin County Libraries have been doing author interviews, and they've decided to branch out and do some artist interviews, and that's why we're here. We are an Edina family of artists. My husband Nick is a sculptor who works mostly in bronze. I'm a painter who works in watercolors and encaustics and pastels. And we're joined today by our lovely daughter, Maren, who is a painter as well, but she is probably more known for her intricate paper cut pieces. We also have a son, Alex, who too is in the arts. He is Director of Marketing and Development at the White Bear Center for the Arts, but couldn't join us for this panel today. So we were given a slew of questions, and I say, let's just get started and see where the discussion goes from here. The first question is, did you always know you were going to be a visual artist? And we'll throw this out to anyone.
I definitely knew I wanted to work in the arts. Growing up in a home of artists, there was so much inspiration that I had looking at the work that you were both making. But also, I think I was very lucky that we went to museums as kids. We always had a finger painting craft or a woodworking craft, or we were always working with our hands. And from a really young age, I knew I wanted to continue that. It was so much fun. It was such a joyful part of my childhood. And right around high school, I started to really seriously consider following in your footsteps.
That's neat. And I think Nick has a really good story about art. And when you were in elementary school, I think that's worth sharing.
Well, I went to Edina Highlands Elementary School, as my kids did. And I had a fourth grade math and art class, which was...
Does those go together?
Yeah, they just were kind of smashed together. And I was given my first piece of clay. The class assignment was to get a piece of clay and make a sculpture. And I was just gung-ho about this, and I made this head, which I had eyes and nose and mouth. I had a lot of detail in it. And then I had a few extra minutes, and some friends gave me some of their extra clay, and I made an elephant in about 2 minutes. And when the projects were on the table the next day, all graded, the head got a C and the elephant got an A. And I was very upset by that. I thought, well, wait a second. I put all this effort into one thing, and yet you thought the elephant, which took 2 seconds, was better. So that started me on a bit of a hunt as to what makes one thing more visually interesting than another, and aesthetics and all those kinds of questions.
Right, and also that art is kind of subjective depending on who's looking at it, because your friends in the elementary school thought that head was fabulous. It couldn't have been better, and then yet that got the C, didn't get the big grade.
Yeah.
So, question 2: were you very deliberate about introducing your children to artistic experiences? And I think Maren spoke to that a little bit ago. We did take our kids to museums, and when they were young, Nick was teaching at the Minnetonka Center for the Arts, and we got a great discount, and so the kids took classes out there, which I thought was fun. And we always tried to make art kind of playful at home. We had all of the materials, the paints and the papers and clay, and it was just a fun part of the day. And I think we tried to almost every day do something that was directly involved with art.
I also think it's interesting, like your mom was a pianist and an organist and a very talented artist, and my mom was a playwright and an actor, and my dad's restaurant hung art on the wall. So I think, multi-generationally, if we grew up with art, then we want our kids to grow up with art. And I think that's something just like you learn from your parents and you teach your kids the same stuff. And so we had good examples.
For sure, that's really important. And the next question kind of leads into that. It says, did you anticipate that your children would choose careers in art?
Oh, I steered them to be lawyers or doctors, anything but artists. Because it isn't an easy job, having lived it. They saw the realistic aspects of what we were doing, and that we weren't going to stop them, certainly. And I kept thinking, if anybody had discouraged me from being an artist, my parents or my friends or my teachers or colleagues even, I think I might have thought twice about it. But because I think we take any discouraging word and magnify it dramatically in our lives. And for some reason, nobody said no, so I just kept going.
Good answer. Yeah, I guess one of the things that our kids grew up with was seeing their dad go off every day and saying, you would say this, I'm the happiest guy, I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I get to go off every day and create art and pursue my passion. And there's something to be said for that. There are a lot of people who are slogging along in their jobs that aren't probably so fulfilled. And that was something I think is a really good role model for you kids to see, that pursue your dreams and things seem to work out, and you want to be happy and live a happy life. So,
But it's also important to have a supportive wife who you can come home to. Doesn't.
okay. The next question, do you find yourself discussing your work when you're together? And I think for me, we discuss some things. Sometimes I'll say, what do you think of a piece I'm working on, and ask the kids or Nick, but so often I feel like it's us going to Nick for some direct advice, that's some technical advice, how to mount something or how to complete a project that has some specialty that you know that we don't. And so I think you've got so much experience in working in the art world that we come to you so often for questions, and we don't just discuss necessarily the aesthetics of the art, but we discuss how can we make this work.
Yeah, I was marveling at Maren's paper cuts and all the time it went into those pieces, and how she was just using X-Acto blades. And I thought, well, are you going through a lot of blades? Because I would watch wallpaper hangers cut wallpaper, and they would snap that blade off or get a different blade every time they made a cut. And she was like, no, I've been using the same blade quite a long time. So I immediately said, here, take a couple of dozen of blades.
Use new blades.
Use some fresh stuff, and I think that made a big difference, doesn't it? I mean,
Oh, absolutely. And I was so lucky when I had a show coming up a couple years ago. I realized in a dead panic about a month before the show had to go up that these large pieces didn't have frames. And I could not afford having them professionally framed for me. And of course, they're not a standard size. So to be able to come to you and go, Dad, please don't get mad. Please help me make a frame. And you helped me so much with that. And I think we both learned together a little bit about the framing process.
oh, absolutely, because I don't need to frame anything. But fortunately, a lot of the tools that I have, I can router wood or I have a lumberyard just down the street, and we managed to make that work pretty well, I thought.
Yeah, for sure. So it's nice to have an expert that we can call upon when we have technical questions, and
Well, now she's working in a frame shop, so we're going to come to you
Yes.
from now on.
our frames are going to be fabulous
They'll
from
be
now on.
beautiful.
Yeah. Speaking of framing, I framed a lot of pieces recently, and the question is talking about, Anne, you have a show coming up at the Arboretum this fall, and they want to know about that. So there was a show that was supposed to be starting in June this year, and we've been bumped back into September, and cross your fingers that it will still happen. But my older brother Peter is a rock balancer, and he teaches rock balancing. He's written a book on rock balancing, and he does fabulous balanced rock pieces and then takes photo imagery of them and prints those and sells those. And he's gotten to be really well known in the area for his rock balancing. And so he was set to do a show at the Arboretum, and the director asked him, Do you know anyone else who works in art that focuses on rocks as a subject? And he said, why, yes, I do. My sister Anne paints rock watercolors. And so we're having a joint show out at the Arboretum in September, starting September 4th. It should be kind of fun. Let's see, next question asked if we have done projects together. And we haven't done a lot together. There was one that you had in college where we each took a vision of a lighthouse. Do you remember that?
Yes. Oh, that was so much fun. That was a printmaking class I was in at Gustavus. And our professor had us send postcards of the prints that we had made to people we knew and have them send us back a version of our print. And mine was a split rock lighthouse. And I sent them to you, and you both came back with beautiful. Yours was wildly colorful, a collage of all different images of the lighthouse in different colors. And Dad, I think yours was coppered.
Yeah.
Pressed the image of the lighthouse into. It's incredible. I think it's a triptych now sitting in the house.
Yeah.
I still have it,
It's
for
super
sure.
fun.
For sure. And Nick and I last summer worked on a project at the Galleria that was a fundraiser for Boys and Girls Clubs, and the Galleria had us make tiny doors. And so when they gave us the parameters of the idea, you could work in a 2-inch deep, 6-inch wide piece, and it could be maybe 6 or 8 inches high. And do whatever you want, but in those really small type parameters. And I said, I want to do a gallery, like a little art gallery. And Nick kept saying, I don't know how that's going to work, Anne. And we made this really foreshortened perspective gallery that had little doors that opened. There were tiny bronze pieces of yours. There were some of my watercolors that looked like they were framed in this funny little space. And we had a gas putting that together. I think it was fun to work together. But
And certainly we've worked
you and
together.
Maren have done
And my
something.
son, both my kids have worked in my studio with me and helped me on many, many projects over the years. They've also been part of my sculpture. They've been models, Maren's and Lesueur, along with Alex, and there's Maren back there, and there's Alex back there. So they've appeared several times in my work.
Plus, you two collaborated on a proposal where Maren was doing the base and you were talking.
Yeah.
We did some work together that way. So I think it's fun where you can see each other in a different light, not just father-daughter, but artist to artist. And I think that's really neat.
Heck, Maren posed for this a little bit. Helped me try to figure out what that arm is doing over there. Come on over here and move your arm like this.
Do you want to talk about that piece?
Oh, this is just something I'm finishing up and going to deliver this week to a couple out in Orono. And it's an angel descending and lifting up a man that's holding a puppy, kind of going through this window frame. It's based on Psalm 91. And so I've got this taped up and ready to spray, clear coat, because this is going to go outside. And so we want to have a protective coat over it. And so I'll do that today or tomorrow, and then hopefully on Tuesday I'll install it.
That's cool. This is an interesting question because I think it can be taken many ways, but it says, do you think there is an artistic temperament, and how would you describe that? And I think we, 3 of us, have artistic temperaments, but they aren't always in the same realm. Is that correct? What do you think?
Exactly right. I think that a lot of people have the idea of what an artist is supposed to be. It's the melancholic French artist that lives in a beautiful studio apartment that has paintings everywhere, and they're always drinking and smoking and making beautiful work, and they're a little sad.
Angsty.
Yeah,
And there's a cat, isn't there?
There's a little black cat,
Yeah.
and they wear berets. But I found the reality of making art, for me at least, is a very flowing experience, where at the beginning I might start very inspired, very excited about the project I'm working on. I'll tell everybody about it. And then about midway through, I take a real dip of I'm a terrible artist. I can't believe anyone lets me make this work, and I will never show this to anyone. And then by the end, it comes back up, and I love the piece again. So for me, I definitely go through moods when I create art.
Well, and I think Nick and I are really extremely different when it comes to artistic temperament. He loves to be extroverted and share his work and share his process while he's working. I'm one who likes to just create on my own, just silently by myself. And then when I have something that I feel is worthy of sharing, I bring it out and go like, hey, what do you think of this? In between, I'm just like, I don't want anyone in my studio. I don't want someone looking over my shoulder, but you're happy to do
Yeah,
that.
for 20 years, I started my career out at Minnetonka at the Arts Center. There'd be 50 people in the room while I was working. So it's like, I couldn't work like you're able to work. And now that I've got my own studio, it's like I'm dragging people in off the street because I just want to talk to somebody. It's just a whole different experience. I think also, at this point in my life, I don't think of my artistic process as being something different than my being.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get up and I go to work and I come home, and I never feel like I'm going into some kind of different mindset, because I find myself having creative moments throughout the day. Sometimes it's while I'm here, sometimes it's while I'm at home, maybe a dream that shatters my wake or my sleep, and I'm suddenly doing something else. So, but it's pretty rare that happens. I just kind of think it's just normal.
Can you speak a little bit about the area that we're in and how you landed here and how that has changed you as an artist or has influenced your art?
Yeah, we're in beautiful northeast Minneapolis, and when I got here, just after the turn of the millennium, I wanted to become a part of the local arts scene, and I joined the NEMA, the Northeast Minneapolis Arts Association, and I got on their board, and I was president for 3 years and ran Art Whirl, and thought I'd really get involved, and I did, and it was great because I connected not so much with the artists, which I thought that was going to be the big benefit, but mostly with the businesses.
Nick, you have many pieces located around the Twin Cities and regionally and even nationally, but the question is, do you have a favorite piece?
My mentor and teacher, Paul Graham, used to always say when someone would ask him that question, he'd always say, the next one.
Your favorite sculpture is?
Is the next one, the one I'm about to do. And I thought that was a bit of a cop-out at first, but I really think that is true. I mean, you are always excited about what you're going to be doing next, not so much what you're working on at the moment or some other piece in your past. I love the fact that I've done pieces of my kids and that they're in many of my works and that they're out there. I think, though, that when Paul died and somebody from the Star Tribune called to ask me questions about him, and they said, what's your favorite piece of Paul's? And of course I started to think, well, it's the next one. And the piece that I was working on at that moment was his next piece, the piece of Father Terence Murphy that sat at the University of St. Thomas. And I just burst into tears because I realized that it's Paul's favorite piece, the piece that
His next piece. But also his last piece.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maren, you've been doing some regional shows with your intricate cut paper. And has it been challenging for you to forge an identity of your own following the family that's really involved in the arts? And the question is, would it be easier if your name had been Anderson versus Legeros?
I would not trade this name for anything. I intend to keep it all of my life because it has opened so many doors for me everywhere I've gone, from high school to college professors that remembered and loved your work, to every job that I've had in the arts. If it's not the Legeros name, it's the Jewel name. There's always a door open because I'm from this family, and I'm so grateful for that. But it is challenging just personally looking at these giant footsteps that I'm following in, trying to live up to the legacy that you've started and created. And I hope that I can continue to make art that makes not only me proud, but the name proud.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Sorry to burden you.
It's a happy bird.
The next question says, Anne and Nick, you've both been educators and artists. Do you have advice for parents who want to nurture the artistic efforts in their children?
Well, don't look at them and say, get a real job. Don't be an artist. That's a tough one. I think when I saw as a teacher how many of my students heard that from their parents, and they were extremely talented people that could have easily had a career.
But they were
as an artist.
discouraged from
But
their
they were
parents.
discouraged, and or they felt somehow that they were unworthy, that they didn't have enough talent, and that they had to have other jobs. And I was seeing them after retirement, and I think, man, that's just so sad because they've wasted so many great years where we're the ones that have suffered because we won't see all that great work that they could have produced. And I think that's a sad statement about our society, that we don't really value the arts enough to support and keep and nurture and have our culture kind of more appreciate this lifestyle and this ability.
One thing that I think is interesting, if you're talking about nurturing children and their creativity, our schools have been really good about exposing kids to processes and mediums and projects. And so often when our kids would come home with a project, we would look at it and it wasn't just something we would stick on the fridge for a couple weeks and then get rid of. Quite often we would frame the piece and have it become part of our family's art collection. And I think that validated the kids as far as your art is important, your art is valued, your art is something we want to hang in our house and enjoy every day. And I think just that act of framing a piece of your kid's artwork and making it part of your household collection of art, I think is really a good thing to do and so positive for the kids to see that.
I can directly remember in 7th grade, I made this really messy, abstract little acrylic painting in art class. I don't even think it was for a specific project, it was just for fun. And I liked it and I folded it up and I put it in my backpack and I thought I'd just show you guys and then, go onto the pile of art projects that I've made, but you framed it and you hung it up on the wall. And I remember thinking, oh, this is something. This really is art. You had me sign it and I put like a star and then the year because I really liked it.
Yeah.
And it just felt so much more special because of that.
For sure. And that leads right to the next question saying, Maren, do you have any advice for parents who want to nurture their children?
I really think letting your kids play. I'm so lucky that growing up, even though we both work in different mediums, neither of you were like, well, you're going to make bronze and you're going to be a sculptor and you're going to like it.
Going to the family business.
Exactly. It was always exploring what I wanted to do as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I think children innately have the desire to express themselves. They want to be creative. They want to get their fingers in the paint, finger paint. And it might not always create an artist, but when you let them express that creativity and you give them a positive response to it, they're going to bring that creative mindset to everything that they do. So they might go into business, but they'll be that out-of-the-box thinker that can really excel in the field. Mm-hmm. So I would say, even if you don't want your kid to grow up to be an artist, because it's hard and it's scary, and I understand that creativity might really benefit them in other ways.
Good answer. That really is thoughtful. I like that. The next section here asks about what we're currently working on. And I just finished a commission for a large encaustic piece. And it was a lot of work, more than I thought going into it. But I enjoyed the final product. And that's what I'm working on. And this show for the Arboretum. I also have some pieces at the Hallberg Center for the Arts, which is in Wyoming, Minnesota. And
Then you won an award.
and I won an award of artistic excellence, which was exciting and made me feel good. So, anything new you're working on, Nick?
I'm about to start a commission for the Westwood Hills Nature Center in St. Louis Park. Just before the COVID thing hit, I installed a bronze sculpture of Willard Eichela at Braemar, and that was just a ton of fun to do. Mostly because I got to know Willard Eichela. He was just the nicest guy. He was just a terrific human being. And
You had some good conversations.
we had some
mostly
great
about
conversations.
hockey.
Surprisingly, mostly about hockey. But what a great memory and what a sharp mind he still has. And I'm also working on a project for Hudson Hospital. So that'll be fun. And of course, this piece that's going in tomorrow.
I'll be honest, I've had a really difficult time creating art during the coronavirus shutdown that we've all been experiencing the last couple months. I found myself completely uninspired to do my usual paper cut work. And I was talking to one of my dear friends from college who's also an incredible artist in many media, but specifically painting. And we decided to start sending each other self-portraits through the mail with letters about what we were experiencing, our thoughts and our feelings. And it has been the best project I've worked on in years.
Love
So we've made, I think each of us has made 3 or 4 self-portraits at this point. I'm waiting for her next one, so I'm working on mine to send to her probably in September. And it's, I think, not only going to be a wonderful way for us to process the state of the world right now, it's going to be a great time capsule when we look back in
Right.
10, 20, 30 years.
What
and
a
see-
treasure to have those back and forth pieces, and then not only the artwork, but the words that you have together. And I think we've talked about the pandemic and how it's changed our lives. And fortunately for us, when it comes to work and art, we haven't had to change dramatically because I still work in my studio by myself. Nick is in this building by himself, goes to work. So day to day, our lives haven't changed dramatically that way, but outside, certainly in the wide world, it has affected all of us. You know.
I think it's strange because a lot of people having so much time to themselves now and in reflection. I had a 93-year-old gentleman call and want me to make a sculpture for outside of his house that he's been thinking about for the past 20 years. I think, oh, okay, I guess this has been kind of good for me in a way because now's the time to do stuff. And it's been a little more complicated working with corporations or hospitals or things like that where they're dealing with so many different issues. It's hard for them to get moving on different projects. But for individuals, yeah, it's been a great time for me.
Surprisingly, I have sold more pieces during this pandemic than I normally do. I think maybe people are having time to peruse websites and look at art and maybe look at their surroundings and think, how can I make my home a place that I like even more by having some new artwork? And so that's been a surprise to me that people are buying art, and that is a pleasant surprise.
Yay.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Well, I think that's it for the questions. And any statements you'd like to still make? You good?
I think you're good.
Thanks for joining us. It was great that you could be a part of this.